But it is so simplistic that God, like everyone else in the story, thinks that having a positive attitude is the one and only thing that matters. Hi friends, my name is Lane, and I'm reviewing books about religious deconstruction, Christian romance, and Christian apocalypse stories. I'm tying all these together in my own fiction writing while looking for some good and bad examples. When I heard that Amish romances were extremely popular to Christian readers, I was intrigued and concerned. Here's the audio clip from Reclaiming My Theology with Brandy Miller, who is having a conversation with fellow podcaster D.L. Mayfield.
I used to also think that Christian romance was just about vibes. Here's a vibe I experienced a few years ago. I walked into a local Christian bookstore. When I walked in, I was like, this is creepy. A bunch of white women wearing bonnets are staring back at me, because that's all the store was basically Amish fiction from, one end of the store to the other. Like, Amish fiction became a huge trend in Christian publishing, and everybody's like, yeah, it makes sense. It's old school. Nobody has sex. It's clean. And I'm like, there's also the whiteness, there's also all.
So I was really interested to know more. I also felt sort of inspired to write the opposite. Comment below if you have an idea of what the opposite of an Amish romance should be. I already felt skeptical that this could be done well, and I wondered why it should be done at all. It seems so strange to write books about a different group of people with a different faith, and in particular, about a group of people who would never read your novel and who are opposed to fiction in general. But I needed to actually read one. I found an author who ranked high on the Amazon bestseller lists and also had books available on Libby, a free book app through your local library. I slowly looked through the long lists of Wanda E. Brunstetter's mini books. I think there are over 200. None of them were catching my interest until I saw a young woman sitting in a wheelchair. That's the one. Looking for a Miracle by Wanda E. Brunstetter, published in 2006. The plot: Rebecca, a 19-year-old Amish woman, uses a wheelchair due to a childhood accident. She is feeling sad because everyone else her age is courting and marrying. She wonders how she can live her life alone without being a burden. Meanwhile, her friend Daniel wants to court her, but he is too shy to speak up. Now, the title of this book made me a little nervous. Does looking for a miracle mean hoping that God will make Rebecca walk again? But that would probably be more of a Pentecostal, charismatic storyline. I suspected the Amish would be more into suffering without complaining as a route to holiness. And indeed, we never see Rebecca expect that kind of healing. Instead, the miracle she wants is to get married and have babies, as is expected of all Amish young women. I was so curious to know what life would be like for a disabled Amish person. On the cover, she's using a modern wheelchair. I had expected crutches or maybe a wooden chair. But this book taught me that the Amish are not averse to modern medicine. During Rebecca's childhood accident, she was taken to a regular hospital and treated there. During an emergency in this book, an Amish man even gets an emergency phone to call 911. There is even a convention for disabled Amish folks in another state, but Rebecca chooses not to go. I really wanted to hear more about that. It was the biggest bait and switch in the book. Why mention it to the reader if you aren't going to go? There's an awkward repetition of the word crippled. Maybe that's accurate to Amish vernacular, or even to 2006, but it made me shudder every time. It sounds like a slur, even though Rebecca is usually the one using it in her own head. There is a contemporary reappropriated slang term you might hear disabled folks say today, So in certain contexts, it's okay to say crip. The author clearly has done a lot of research on the Amish. She loves including Pennsylvania Dutch words and describing their food and customs. During the wedding scenes, I realized she had certainly been to one of these weddings herself. She lists the special wedding food they eat with reverence. The author admires a lot about the Amish. She paints their lifestyle as being better, somehow, than regular American life. More simple, more pure.
There's lots of pioneer themes.
Yes.
The Amish are interesting because you can sort of do some modern stuff with the Amish, but then it still feeds into that pioneer kind of thing.
It really
so
does.
I am like, it kind of is that simple. Like, we long for this world, and we would like our women to long for this as well.
In the story, Rebecca's parents don't have fights or even disagreements. They're very much in love. And Rebecca herself will finish the book with all her life problems resolved before she finishes her teen years. I'm concerned about glamorizing this group of people. I'm sure there are things they do that are wonderful and that we can all learn from. Their pacifism sounds great, but there's a lot of information already available about problems in Amish communities. Some of those problems come from isolationism, and we know that systems that are built around patriarchy hide those who harm women. But in this story, all the women are safe and happy. I assume the author has spent real quality time with the Amish people. Perhaps she even gives them van rides to Costco, like one of the outsider ladies does in the book. But there were still things that felt untrue to me. A lot of that centered around the religion. The Amish in this story have a faith I can't distinguish from American Evangelical Christianity. I don't know very much about the Amish religion, but I feel confident it should be different. Rebecca inherits her grandma's Bible, and she uses the underlined verses to comfort herself. Oddly, we don't hear very many of those verses. She would need to keep grandma's Bible handy in the days to come, for she needed to bathe herself in God's word every day in order to not give in to self-pity or start fretting about the future. This might be a real thing Amish people do, but it sounds suspiciously like the way that I was raised. And again, just like how I was raised, everything is very individualistic. The narrative tells us that Rebecca's only problem is her attitude. Her younger sister is also called out for her attitude a lot. The book constantly calls Rebecca self-pitying. A conversation with her mom highlights this. "Oh, Rebecca, it's possible for you to have a meaningful life. Why, many people in this world have disabilities, and most of them lead fairly productive lives." Mom squeezed Rebecca's shoulders. "You were always such a pleasant, easygoing child, and I thought you had come to accept your limitations. However, since you've become a young woman, I've noticed a definite change in your attitude, and I'm not sure I like what I see." It's possible that the Amish are focused on productivity, as they tend to be working the land, building furniture, doing a lot of manual labor. But this casual combination of meaningful and productive is so common in American culture, it just makes me blue. Again, I don't know if the Amish are as focused on capitalism as the rest of America. It seems like they should have a different set of values. They do a lot of communal work together, like raising a barn, but they also have money and private property. What does being productive mean to the Amish? Does it mean growing enough food to feed your family and save some for the future? Or does it mean making a lot of money? Most Americans are focused on money. I want to contrast quotes from Dr. Amy Kenny, a disability theology scholar. She explains the issue. "People are taught to value product over personhood, profit over people, and cash as king above all else. Disabled people do not produce anything the capitalist market deems valuable, and therefore we are cast aside as drains on the system." From the book, My Body is Not a Prayer Request. I would like to think the Amish have a different perspective, but we don't get to see it. In real life, disability activists make the argument that accessibility and equity are the problems, not the disability or the attitude of the disabled person. In this story, there are no systemic issues causing problems for Rebecca's life, even though that doesn't seem realistic. Rebecca's dad built ramps to their porch, and the family and the community seemed to work to accommodate Rebecca's needs. The theme of "your only problem is you" is driven home toward the end when Rebecca's aunt tells her a story and perspective on faith. "God let me know that my bitterness and blaming myself for so many things was of my own doing. He showed me I could shed all my doubts and hurts from the past. God can do that for you too, Rebecca. He wants you to be happy if you'll only trust him. He can work a miracle in your life, just as he did mine." There's a seed of good ideas here. I like the theme of letting go in the right time, or the idea that God wants Rebecca to be happy. Again, that sounds like a more American thought than it does an Amish thought, but I'm letting it go. But it is so simplistic that God, like everyone else in the story, thinks that having a positive attitude is the one and only thing that matters. Rebecca has some moments of doubt, but those moments are overshadowed by the self-pity theme. I'm not sure if I can even call them doubt. Rebecca thinks God doesn't speak to her, but this worry is resolved fairly early on by reading a couple Bible verses. So the religious parts leave me confused. I learned things about Amish culture on a superficial level, but I don't know anything new about their faith. It leaves me in a weird place as I'm attempting to critique this book, because I just end up critiquing white American evangelicalism again. The best part of this book was Rebecca starting her own small business. It was almost feminist, if you ignore the way Amish people don't follow building, business, or safety regulations. The community helped her build a greenhouse, and the love interest Daniel joined her in growing and selling flowers. It was a great way for Rebecca to be personally empowered, to feel like she was doing something meaningful, and to also move the friendship and the romance forward. But I had a lot of problems with the romance. First, I have to complain about the reading level of this book. Maybe I've misunderstood something. Maybe I need to read more Amish Romance to clarify. I don't really want to do that. I thought Amish Romance was popular for adult women, but this seems to be written at a level for 12-year-olds. And I don't usually mind simple language, but this was tedious to read. If the story is targeting 12-year-olds with the idea that women should marry young and have lots of babies, that's very different from targeting adult women who are looking to enjoy a story that's an escape from their daily life. So, who is the intended audience? The obstacles to this romance were so frustrating. We meet Daniel admiring Rebecca in the first chapter with this absurd paragraph from his point of view. "Even if I had the nerve to ask Rebecca to take a ride in my rig, it ain't likely she would have been interested in riding home in my simple courting buggy with an ordinary fellow like me." We are never given a reason why Daniel is so down on himself. I thought that being simple and ordinary were attributes to the Amish. Sometimes they call themselves the plain people. Even though Daniel lacks self-confidence, he starts spending time with Rebecca and her best friend, Mary Ellen. So Rebecca decides he must secretly love Mary Ellen, even though she is already courting another young man in the community. So this is the conflict in the romance. Over and over and over, Daniel tries to draw close to Rebecca. Every time she thinks he's pursuing Mary Ellen. Did I mention this book is tedious? Poor Daniel. He's so smitten with Mary Ellen that he doesn't know what to do. What with Johnny being around all the time, he has as much chance of winning her over as a snowball does of staying frozen until the 4th of July. Chapter 3. Again, in chapter 15, surely his heart must be broken because Mary Ellen had chosen Johnny and not him. Sorry if I'm giving these kids a weird accent, by the way. It feels like how it's written. Even after Mary Ellen gets married and Daniel gives Rebecca a ride on his courting buggy, open top so the kids can't get frisky, Rebecca keeps talking herself out of any possibility of him liking her. "It's almost like a real date," she thought wistfully, but she reminded herself It was merely one friend giving another friend a ride home from the singing. Chapter 17. Daniel has to spell out for her that he wants to court her, and later that courting her means he wants to marry her. I want you to be my wife. Rebecca stared at the table, thinking she must have misunderstood what he'd said and wondering if he might have been joking. That was from chapter 21. Soon after, Rebecca tells her friend the worst sentence in the whole book. I'm not a complete woman. Yikes. It turns out there's one more misunderstanding, and this one makes me mad on multiple levels. Apparently, Rebecca's doctor once told her that she might not be able to have children. I don't know why you'd tell this to a 7-year-old in the hospital without her parents' supervision, and there's no medical reason given. Rebecca isn't paralyzed, and there's no mention of damage to her reproductive organs. But this nonsense is included for the sake of drama. And it's neatly tied up when they get pregnant right after they get married. There's more drama. Rebecca breaks the engagement because she thinks Daniel is trying to steal her business. Rebecca almost drowns because she walks too far on her crutches and tries to rescue a kitten in the river. Daniel's family gets trapped in a buggy accident in a snowstorm, and Rebecca finds them in a borrowed buggy that she is driving alone without telling anyone where she is. I don't mind drama plot lines, but the common thread is that Rebecca is wildly immature and can't make good decisions. She is too young to get married, and she is not going to be a good partner. Maybe she has learned to communicate a tiny bit better by the end of the book, but I genuinely fear for her life. The wedding has a final image of ableism. Rebecca uses her crutches that day. Even though the narrative has been clear that she hates her crutches, she isn't skillful at using them, and they cause her pain. Yet, she had chosen to wear her leg braces that day so she could stand for her wedding vows rather than sit in the confining wheelchair. I realize this was written in 2006, but I'm going to be mad about it anyway. I don't remember when it became a popular trend for disabled brides to get out of their wheelchair to walk down the aisle, but it might have started back then. In 1999, there was a popular book called A Walk to Remember, and it became a movie in 2002. The end of the story was about the teen girl walking down the aisle to get married, even though she was dying from leukemia and could barely stand. I didn't care for that book. I'll end instead with another quote from the excellent Dr. Amy Kenny and some images of brides and a groom using their wheelchairs for their special day. Wheelchairs mean freedom, many disability advocates proclaim, because they allow us to move about the world with greater ease and agency. We don't consider our wheels confining because they aid our mobility and individuality. I am quicker and more agile in my chair than on my legs. Using my wheelchair is far less painful too. There's a freedom in using mobility devices that acknowledges the limits of my body and declares, I can't do it all by myself, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. From My Body is not a prayer request. I hope you enjoyed this book review. Leave me a comment if there's a book you think I should review, especially if it's about religious deconstruction in fiction. I'd also love to hear if you're writing anything similar. Thanks for watching.
And I think Christian publishing has impacted the United States way more than we want to believe. And
Yes.
I think the Christian romance genre, right, since the 1980s has exploded and become such a huge part of the Christian fiction market, right? It's like over 2/3 of all Christian fiction is romance.
Wild.
And if you look at them, the vast majority of them are in time periods where women had no rights, gay people supposedly didn't exist, and it's just white people as far as the eye can see, right?